Then let's turn over for you to the other side of the studio because Laurent Berchticker joins us for our press review this morning. Laurent, good morning to you.
Nadia.
You're going to be starting us off then with one of our top stories today, and that is the situation in Algeria, this Friday marking the 6th consecutive week of protests there.
Well, it's a symbolic date, and like every Friday, hundreds of thousands of Algerians are expected to demonstrate throughout the country. We see French paper Libération dedicating its front page to this protest movement, a 6-page special in which the paper asked a variety of Algerian artists to give their opinion on the movement. It also explores the role that these artists have had in fueling these protests, especially over the past 20 years, where criticizing the regime was a bit taboo in Algeria, and where many artists found ways to bypass this censorship in their songs, their films, or their books. And these artists now find themselves completely free to speak their mind, and many of them have actually emerged as leading voices in the protest movement.
You know, one of the things that's very interesting about what we're seeing in Algeria is that Bouteflika has said he'll step down as president, but really it seems that those protests aren't going away. Perhaps they're even growing in intensity now.
Well, the movement has certainly changed from its original form, and according to Algerian daily El Watan, it represents now the people's answer to the regime, la réponse du peuple. There's a sense among these protesters that the ruling elite is now ditching Bouteflika to basically save itself and cling on to power. And the people don't want that either. So we can see this young man holding a sign, "Let's create our new Algeria." And that's basically what the people's answer has been, the departure of the old guard for a new generation of new politicians, basically.
Now, Laurent, let's take a look then at one of our other top stories today. That's Brexit, because today, in theory, was the day that Britain was going to leave the bloc.
Well, much has happened since that date was set, but it's pretty safe to say that Brexit probably will not happen today. At least that seems to be the consensus when we look at the British press. British tabloid, the Daily Express, calls it the darkest hour for democracy. It argues that 1,000 days after the referendum, the government's inability to deliver Brexit is, and I quote, rocking the democratic process to its core. Now we see the Daily Mail, meanwhile, which is one of the few papers still holding out hope for tonight's vote, with the headline "One Last Chance." And the paper is literally calling on British MPs to back Theresa May's Brexit deal.
Now, if that deal does go through today, against all the odds, Theresa May has said she's stepping down. How have the British press been reacting to that suggestion?
Well, there's been a lot of reactions to that, many cartoons, and we can see one here in The Spectator of Theresa May's signature leopard-printed shoes left behind for the paper. Theresa May is already finished. She left this impression of being in office without being actually in power. And the article argues that she leaves behind an even greater set of challenges than she inherited. So the question is really, who is brave enough to fill these shoes?
We'll have to wait and see, Laurent. Well, I don't know whether they're quite big shoes to fill, but there's certainly a big job ahead for whoever that new leader might be.
That's right. Just shortly, there were also a few other articles in the international press about Brexit. The New York Times had this great cartoon of Theresa May crucified on the British flag, on the cross, literally sacrificing herself for the sake of Brexit in front of MPs who show little appreciation. One is thanking her for her sacrifice, but they're quite busy fighting amongst themselves. And in Le Monde, the same notion of sacrifice is there. We can see the headline, Theresa May sacrificing herself on the altar of Brexit.
All right, Laurent, then let's move on then to your penultimate story for us today. That's Venezuela, where the opposition leader Juan Guaido has been banned from running for public office for the next 15 years. What's the response to that been?
Well, Venezuelan paper El Nacional tries to explain this decision, which came after a state comptroller noticed inconsistencies in Guaido's financial statements. This means Guaido will be ineligible to run for re-election as president of the National Assembly for the next 15 years. This, of course, has largely been seen as a political move by Nicolas Maduro, who sees Guaido as his main challenger and the biggest threat to his regime. And El Nacional contacted several judicial experts who say the challenge actually has very little legal basis. Not only is Guaido protected by parliamentary immunity because he's the president of the assembly, but the person who announced this suspension, who's a state comptroller, has no legal authority to make such a decision.
Finally then, Laurent, end for us with something a little lighter.
Well, you may have seen in recent weeks videos of dogs crying and acting out in front of the Lion King's most famous scene where Mufasa dies. And thanks to outstanding investigative work by the Huffington Post, we now think we know why. The paper interviewed a dog behavior scientist who says dogs recognize themselves in Simba, who displays very canine characteristics despite being basically a cat. And also, the dogs are very receptive to music, particularly the high-pitched sounds that we can hear in this scene. So there you have it. They can tell the emotion of the scene. And a note of caution, maybe don't show the Lion King to your puppy until it's a few months old.
Laurent, thank you very much indeed. That's Laurent Versticker there with our press review this morning on the programme. It's time for a short break. Do stay with us, though, because coming up we'll be heading to Ukraine 2 days ahead of national elections there. And in an astonishing story of life imitating art, an actor who played a president on television is apparently in with a decent chance of being elected himself in real life. Stay with us.